All right, we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining for the July monthly CAD training. This month's topic is going to be storm sewer pipe networks and storm charts. So as per normal, if you have any questions, you can put them in the Google Meet chat. I'll try to watch it. If I don't see it and it's pertinent to where we are, you can feel free to unmute and ask. As usual, this is also going to be recorded and posted to YouTube later for people to reference later on. So if you ever need a refresher, you can look for it on the Pantera YouTube channel. About an hour ago, I emailed out a link to the handout and an outline of what the CAD exercises for this month are going to be, as well as some sample CAD files. This month it was a zipped folder because of the way some of the files are put together. So if you wanted to use it, you need to extract that into a folder on your N drive or someplace where you can access it locally to interact with the files. And there's the path on the screen. So to get started, we're going to review a couple things quick from last month, since last month was kind of an intro to pipe networks. So the few helpful hints. You can use the multiple viewport configuration if you need to view plan and profile at the same time, or if you're working on, in this case, storm charts at the same time as seeing a plan view or a profile view. It can be really useful. The other thing that's really important when we're talking about pipe networks is to use at least version 2024 or newer. We've had issues, especially with the storm sewer pipe networks with older versions, even to the point where if one person on a project team is using 2024 or 25 and somebody else opens it and tries to interact and they're using 2022, it can really mess things up for everybody. So I would caution that. If you are using something older than 2024, I would recommend at this point to just install 2025. It's working pretty well and it's running faster than 2024 is for me, so you can keep that in mind. So to get started, we're going to review parts catalogs. So this is essentially a listing of all parts that we have access to add to our parts lists. We keep them on the S drive. If you ever go to make a new pipe network or swap parts or something like that and the list looks like it's blank, make sure the catalog is pathed. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We're going to jump into Civil 3D. There we go. This is just a new drawing. You can do this in a project you're working in or an empty drawing. It doesn't really matter. But where you want to look is in the Modify tab in the ribbon, and then we're going to click on Pipe Network, and then we are going to go to the Parts List drop-down and click Set Network Catalog. Within there, you should see it path to the S-Design Pantera CAD Standards Pipes Catalog folder. If your list is coming up blank when you're trying to interact with it, more than likely it's pathed to somewhere on your C drive, so you'll need to change that. You can hit this little folder button and browse to where it needs to be. Once you do that, you're going to have new drop-down lists here. For the pipes, you want to use the US Imperial Pipe Catalog, and for the structures, you want to use the Pantera Standard Inlets Catalog. Once you have that set and hit OK, your lists should populate. One thing that's come up lately with a few people, if their list came up blank, they checked this catalog path and it still didn't work, they might need to regen their parts list. The way to do that, after you check that your path is good, you can type in part catalog regen command, and then it gives you options on the command line to refresh the pipes or the structures. I would do both. And then if you try to get into your list again, it should have everything there. So I didn't show that last month. That's something a little bit new, but it's a good thing to remember in case you would need it. So that's a quick review of the parts catalogs. So now to move into the topic for this month, which is the storm sewer side of it, there's a couple things you need to do to prep before you start to make your network. The first thing I like to do is have the site graded, and you like to have a good surface that has spot elevations and some kind of markers where I want the inlets to be. Usually I either use the blocks that are in the template, or I'll put maybe circles on the PRUT storm inlet layer, or something that I can snap to easily to make sure I get all my inlets where they need to be once I make a network. So that's some quick setup. Now, how to actually make your network. The first thing you want to do, and we're going to walk through it, but just kind of an overview so you know where we're going. I always start with making the inlets, and I don't connect any pipes to start out. So I insert my inlets using the dummy objects that I mentioned before, and then I move and rotate them. And what I've found to work the best when doing that is to treat them like blocks. I don't do any grip editing. I turn on OSnap and I use move, rotate, those basic CAD commands to manipulate them, because that allows you, like on our type C inlets, to snap to the midpoint at the face of curb to move and rotate. It works pretty well. Sometimes using the grips to rotate doesn't work because it rotates about the center point of the inlet. So that I've found to be helpful. The next step I do is place and connect all of the pipes. This first bullet point is really important. You always want to draw your pipes from upstream to downstream. If you don't, the storm charts will not work, and you're going to end up having to delete pipes and put them back in the right direction, or grip edit and flip pipes around to make it work. So that's always really important, and that's some of the reason why I put all of the inlets in first, so it makes it easier down the road to just connect the pipes from high to low. Whenever I first draw a new network, I always just use 15-inch pipe. That's the smallest size we would use anyway, and it's easier than switching sizes as you draw. It's just a little quicker. After you get them all drawn, you go back through and you reset the connection points so that it connects to the midpoint of the walls on the box instead of the center point of the structure. I'll show that here in a couple minutes. And then another important point, when you're connecting pipes to the structures, you want to turn off your O-snaps, and the pipe networks will actually bring up interactive grips for where you want to connect them, and I'm going to show that as well. The other thing we do for culvert ends, outfall pipes, things like that, they have to have structures on the end so that you can show them in the storm chart. And I would use null structures because they don't plot, but you can still add a label to them. So that's how we do that. So the next step would be setting top of grates. There's a couple different ways to do that. You can use the surface, or you can do them manually. Typically what I like to do is put spot elevations where my top of grates need to be ahead of time, and then I set them manually. I like to do it that way so that I can guarantee they won't accidentally adjust themselves if I change the surface. I want to be able to have control over what those tops are. If that means I have to take an extra 15 minutes and manually reset some tops when I adjust the grading, I would rather do it so I can be sure they're right. And then I would go through and set the pipe inverts. Generally for 15-inch pipes, we're going to use a depth of 3.25 feet from the top. That gives us 2 feet of cover, and then you can use your pipe slopes and work downhill from there. So first Civil 3D exercise today is going to be creating a storm sewer pipe network. So we're going to create the network, take care of the structures, connect the structures with the pipes, set our top of grates, and set our inverts. So we'll jump into Civil 3D. For this, you're going to want to use the sample file that was provided on the S drive. When you open it, you should see this convenience store site. This is a project we're working on now over off the Benner Pike. The file has a surface in it. Everything's been graded. There are spot elevations where I'm going to have the inlets. There are dummy circles where we're going to put our structures and stuff in. I left the storm sewer on in this so that you can see kind of why I did what I did to set it up. But at this point moving forward, I'm going to freeze them, and we're going to act like it's never had a network in it. So, all right. So the first step we're going to do is open the Pipe Network Creation Tools. So you're going to go to the Home tab, you're going to go to Pipe Network and click Pipe Network Creation Tools. This brings up your dialog. From here we're going to name our network. I'm going to name mine PR Storm. We're going to select the PTE Storm Sewer Parts List. And for right now, I'm not going to have it automatically label anything, and I'm not going to associate any surfaces or alignments. So I hit OK, and it brings up the toolbar for the network layout tools. You can see the parts list that we're using is referenced here. Shows no surface, shows no alignment because we didn't set one. So to start out, what I'm going to do is just use Type-C inlets everywhere. So I'm going to pick a 2x4 Type-C inlet. It probably will freeze for a minute after you set this structure. I'm not sure why, but if you're patient, you'll see it change up here, and now you're good. So we have that. From here, I'm only going to do the boxes to start, so I'm going to hit this drop-down button. This lets you choose what you're drawing, and I'm going to draw structures only. You can see down in the command line, specify the structure insertion point. So now I'm going to start going through and connecting things. For timing and what we're doing today, I'm just going to draw my network for maybe 4 inlets, and then we'll just go with that. This site would have a few more, but this will save us a little bit of time, and you have to see the process. So I'm just going to use my dummy points. I'm going to snap to my circles and just place my boxes. We're going to do that. And place one over here. And actually, we're going to go down the road just a couple boxes. All right. So now that they're placed, we're going to move and rotate them. Like I said before, I'm going to move them and rotate them just as if they were blocks in the drawing. I'm not going to use these grips. So I'm just going to do these, get them lined up on the curves real quick. I don't know if you noticed, but whenever you insert a structure, it inserts the center of the box at the point you click, so you are going to need to move all of the Type-C inlets to get them where you want them to be. At this point, that's a limitation with the way the networks go in Civil 3D, where we can't set that insert point on our own. But ultimately, it's really not too difficult to do it. I'm kind of doing this part of it quickly, so these may not be exactly where they need to be, but I'm not going to make you watch me move and rotate blocks for an hour. So we'll get them pretty close and keep moving. Okay, so we're moved, we're rotated to where we need to be. The next step is going to be to draw our pipes in. So now we're going to go back to our Network Layout Tools toolbar. I'm going to select under the pipe dropdown. I'm going to open the N12 HDPE for our HDPE pipe, and I'm going to pick 15 inch. And then I'm going to hit my drop down for what I'm drawing, and I'm going to say pipes only. And now I'm going to draw from high to low. So I'm going to turn my object snaps off, and you can see it brings up grips with dots at either side, all the sides of the box. That's telling you where you want it to connect. So it filled in the dot that it's going to connect to, so I'm going to connect that one at the front. And for some reason, sometimes it does the grip you want, and sometimes, like it did right there, it connects into the center, and I'll show you how to fix that here in just a moment. So now I'm just going to go box to box, from upstream to downstream, with my 15-inch pipes, and we'll end the command. So now we're going to reset our connections. To do that, I'm going to click on the box. It brings up the contextual pipe networks part of the ribbon. I'm going to click reset connection, closest connection point, and now you can see the end of the pipe is on the inside of the wall. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to do that for these other boxes. It'll do all of the connections for each box at one time. Every once in a while, it'll do like it did here and put it on the wall you don't want. If it does that, you can just grip at it. It'll fill in the dot you do want, and you click, and it'll put it on that wall. Okay, so those are all set. Next step is going to be to set my top of grade elevations. I have my spot elevations, so I can go through and do that. The way you're going to do that is by selecting your structure, right-click, and go to Structure Properties. Brings up the Structure Properties dialog box. It's exactly the same as the sanitary one we saw last week. So to set our tops, we're going to go to Part Properties tab, Insertion Rim Behavior. I don't want it to use the surface, so I'm going to set this to false, and I'm going to type in the number that I have on my spot elevation. And I'll just keep going down the list. Oops, typo. Okay, so now we have our boxes in, our pipes in, our tops are set, and the last thing we're going to do is set our inverts. So I am going to go back to the top box. I'm going to go to Structure Properties. I'm going to go to my Connections tab this time, and I'm going to type in my desired invert. Typed it in, hit apply, and OK. And now, just like sewer, you can go into pipe properties and you can set your slopes. In this case, I'm actually going to use the top since this one's quite a bit lower, and I'll just set them manually. last week, or last month rather, we talked about how with sanitary sewer we usually put 25/100ths between the inverts. With storm we use 1/10, so I just set the top one. Now I'm going to set the bottom one. And we'll just continue on down the line. If you want to set them via the pipe slope, you select the pipe, you go to pipe properties, and then under the part properties you can see the slope. That's what we'll do for this one. So we're going to hold the start and we're going to go down at minus 0.5%. And that'll set my invert into the box. And now I can go to structure properties and set my invert out. So I'm just going to keep going down the line for the last 3 inlets, and we'll get these all set and keep moving. I don't remember if I said it or not, but one thing that we usually do with storm sewer is we use a 0.5% minimum slope on all of our pipes. So keep that in mind when you're setting your pipe inverts and your slopes. And when you're in the structure properties dialog box, you can also see the slope of the pipe as you're adjusting the inverts, how it affects it. Okay, so now we have a network created. It has structures, it has pipes, it has the tops set, and it has the slopes set on the pipes. So that's a basic setup for a 6-inlet network. So now we'll jump back over into the presentation slides and go to the next step. So the next part of this is going to be profiling your pipe network. The first thing you want to do, just like any profile, is you need to have an alignment to make a profile view for. There's a few ways you can do this. You can do it via the network parts and it will create the alignment for you, and that requires some manipulation afterward. Or you can manually draw a polyline and create it from that, just like you would for pretty much any other alignment, like we would do for a road alignment. At that point, you can create a profile view, add your surfaces to it, add your network parts to it, and then we can go through with labeling. Quick note for what is usually required for us. Generally speaking, we don't profile the storm sewer with an alignment over the storm sewer. Although recently we have been asked to profile cross-lot storm sewer or anything that's not under roads, which would have their own profiles. For land development projects, we usually do not profile any storm sewer unless we're specifically asked to via a review comment. We do normally show all the storm sewer when we profile a road in a subdivision. And I added there, profiling storm sewer can still be useful as a design aid. It is helpful and it's quick enough to do if you want to have kind of working type profiles in your MD. You can do that, and it's useful for checking for conflicts and distances vertically between water lines, sewer mains, all that kind of stuff. So next exercise we're going to do is profiling the storm sewer. We're going to make our alignment from the network parts. We are going to draw a profile view for the new alignment, and then we're going to draw the storm sewer parts in a profile. So we'll flip over to CAD, and we're going to just continue on from the network we had the last time. First thing we're going to do is make this alignment from the network parts. The way you do that, you go in your Home tab to Alignment, then we go to create alignment from network parts. It's going to prompt you to pick the first network part. I usually start on the high end, so I'm going to pick the highest inlet at the end of my run. And then it says select the next network part. In this case, this is only one run of pipe, so I'm just going to pick the last one, and it highlights everything in between for me. I'm going to end the command. I'm going to put it on a site. Site's going to be PR Storm. From here, you can set all of your alignment things the way that we would normally do as far as your labeling, your styles, all that good stuff. And I'm going to check the box that says create profile and profile view. From here, I have my new alignment. I need to add my surfaces, so I'm going to add my existing and proposed. I'm going to set my styles to EG for existing, FG for proposed, and hit OK. And then I'm going to say draw in profile view. It brings up the create profile view dialog box. So I'm going to name my profile view PR Storm. I'm going to set my style, profile view style, to land desktop profile view left to right. And we'll move through as if we were creating a road profile, sewer profile, anything else. It's all the same idea. One thing that is helpful when you're creating any kind of profile, I always go to the profile display options and I turn off the labels for the profiles. Otherwise, you end up with slope labels all over the finished grade and existing grade lines that you have to delete. Okay, so now we're in the pipe and pressure network tab, I guess, of this dialog. Because we created this from network parts, it's automatically going to add every part that was selected to make the alignment. If you were creating this from a polyline alignment, you would have to go through and add them manually, which I can show you how to do. All right, data bands, let's get these set. And we're going to put our profile view over here. So now I'm going to split my viewports like I was talking about at the beginning of this so that I can see my plan and profile at the same time. And you can see it created a pipe network, or a profile of my pipe network. And it looks like I have an inlet here whose top needs to be adjusted. So we can go ahead and do that. And that's kind of the benefit of creating a profile. You can see when that's needed very easily. And now I'm remembering why this looks the way that it looks. So I actually made a mistake with the way I connected this. In our real design, it goes from this box to this box. For what we're doing, I'm going to leave it because having it as one run is kind of all we need for this. So we'll leave it for now. But if this was a real life situation, we would not have enough cover over this pipe. And we also wouldn't want to bring this storm sewer pipe under this retaining wall or that close to the transformer. So just so you know, if any of you were thinking, why did we do that? It's because I connected the boxes the wrong way. But for the sake of doing a pipe network, it's fine. Now you can see since I adjusted this top, we would need to adjust the slope because this is running uphill. So we can do that now from within our profile. And I can just set my slopes back to 0.5%. And I can tweak my inverts accordingly. Same thing here. This may be a cover issue we could check as well. It's only about 1.7 feet. We would probably want to drop that down to make that work, to get us closer, or more than 2 feet. So that's how you can create a profile and your alignment. One thing I would say, especially if you're profiling your storm for something that's going to be submitted, you'll notice it puts the PIs sometimes in weird spots. Like right here, the alignment's not even over the pipe. Typically what I like to do is edit the alignment. So I would click on the alignment, go to the geometry editor, and I would add some PIs. So I would put one at the end where all of the pipes connect, so that it's more accurate and over the box, or over the pipes. So I'm just going to do that real fast. If you were to create this via a polyline, you wouldn't have that issue. Alright, there we go. That looks a little bit better in the profile. The boxes are the right widths with the way we have it drawn now, instead of it being kind of off. So I'm going to save that real quick. And the other thing I wanted to show with profiles is this works well if you're profiling the storm specifically, but if you want to add these parts to a road profile, for example, there's a little bit of a different way you can go about it. Up here in your drawing is a profile view that just has a finished grade and existing grade. This is the profile of this driveway. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3 inlets and 2 pipes to it so that we can see how that looks. So to do that, you want to select the parts that you want to have shown. So I'm going to grab all of these. You can see at the top of the screen in my ribbon, it brought up the contextual menu for pipe networks. So within that, I'm going to say draw parts in profile view, and I'm going to click on my grid, and it puts them into the drawing where they're supposed to be. You could then add labels to it, do whatever you need to do. So that's that. From here, we're going to jump back into the slides. Okay, next is labeling. Labeling for storm sewer pipe networks is basically the same as labeling for sanitary. So generally in our plan views, we just use tags of the name of the structure for storm, since we have storm charts on almost everything we do. For pipes, we usually just put flow arrows because that's required, and we don't generally put the length, material, and slope because it becomes kind of a nightmare with text conflicts, and that information is also in the storm chart. For profiles, we usually have the labels for the structures that have the tops, all of the inverts, the station that it's located at, all that good stuff. As of right now, the time of this recording, our label styles for the offset from center line do not currently work properly for pipe networks because they label to the insert point of the structure, which on a type C inlet is not at the face of curb, it's the center of the box. So I haven't been using that offset style. If you run into a comment or something where someone requests it, we can work through that, but for right now I would just stay away from it until a fix is made. So crossing pipes, whether you have storm or sanitary crossing your alignment, that they can also be shown and labeled, and I'll show you how to do that too. Okay, so now we're going to jump back into Civil 3D, back into our drawing here, and we are going to add some labels. So first we're going to do plan view. We are going to label our structures with just names. So I'm going to go to my Annotate tab, add labels. I'm going to go to Pipe Network, Single Part Plan. I usually like to do it one part at a time so I can control exactly what I'm adding labels to. And I'm going to do, oh, this is new. So earlier this week, the template was updated. all of these styles are now current and they are labeled, whether they're for storm or sanitary and plan or profile. All of the extra old ones have been removed. So we are going to do pipes first, and we're going to label storm, plan, and we're just going to do flow arrows. And then for structures, we're going to go to storm, and we're going to do name only. And I'm going to click on my structure and the pipes. You can see it drew the flow arrow in. Just select all of these. All right, that's enough for now. It puts the name labels at the insert point. You want to drag them out then so that you can place them wherever you need to for your plan sheets. Our storm sewer name labels, it puts a box and a background mask over them. This differentiates them from the sanitary. The sanitary has a rounded box, and the storm, it's just a normal box. So that's something to keep in mind. So there we have some structure and pipe labels and plan. We do also have a couple of other styles. If you have a project where you only have a couple of inlets, you may not need a storm chart, so you can use this storm plan structure label style, and it will add all of the information that you need to your plan, including top, inverts, and pipe sizes and types. There is also one for storm plan pipes that has length, size, type, and slope of the pipe. You can use that if needed as well. So that's plan view. Profile view, same process. In our add labels dialog box, we're going to change the label type to single part profile now. And we are going to label our structures with storm profile, our pipes with storm profile, length description and rules, or length description and slope rules. And we're going to add. Now within here, I'm going to go back to my storm profile, and I can just start clicking on the parts I want to label. And it'll add them in. You can see this put crossing pipes in. That's because this style is set. You don't need those. If you do it and it adds those, you can always just delete them out. It's not a big deal. So it added my labels. I'm going to drag them out. One thing I will note with this, we have run into issues in the past where if you add labels, it puts them way down, like 1,000 feet below the profile view. In these last couple new drawings I've made out of the template that have the newest label styles, I haven't had that issue. If you do have that issue in your drawing, you can see either Hauser or myself, and we can help you get that taken care of. So you can see we added our labels. This label style has the stationing in it, but it shows up as question marks. That's because we need to set a reference alignment for the labels. So to do that, you're going to select your labels, and then in your properties window, which I'll drag over, there is a reference alignment section. It's set to none. We're going to change that to our storm alignment, and it'll put our stations in where we need them to be. So that's how you do those in profile. We did the pipes, same information that we had before. There's also a style we can add that shows that information stacked. This is useful if you have a shorter pipe run. It puts it below it. It just kind of is condensing everything to try to make it easier to get things to fit on a plan sheet if you have to. It also adds the flow arrows at the center of the pipes. Okay, next thing we're going to do is how to add and label a crossing pipe in a profile view. So in our profile, we have a sanitary main, existing one, that crosses it. I modeled this as its own pipe network so we could add it. So the way to show that, you would click on the pipe you want to add, draw on profile view, and then we're going to click on our grid. You can see it's in over here, but we need to make it show up as a crossing. To do that, we are going to click on our grid, go to Profile View Properties. We're going to go to our Pipe Networks tab, and something that's really useful, we're going to click Show Only Crossing Pipes, and it's going to pull pipes that are crossing through the alignment. So it's sanitary. There's only one. I see it here. It's checked to draw it. And what we want to do is override the style. When you're doing a crossing pipe, you only want to do the override. If you change it in this style column, it will change it in plan view and in all of your views, whether it be plan or profile. If you do it in an override, it only changes it for this specific profile view. So we're going to click on it. We are going to change it to pipe crossing pipe. It's sanitary, so we'll pick the sanitary one. We apply, and now you can see where that pipe crosses the alignment. To label it, we're going to click on it, right click, add label. It put the label in. By default, it puts in the existing style, which you can see in my properties. There are two, existing and proposed. It just changes the text style. It's an existing sanitary, so we make it existing. So that's how you label your crossing pipes. So that's it for labeling. We're going to save that, and we're going to run back into the presentation. Okay, next up, how to change the size of inlet boxes and pipes. So there's a command, it's called swap part. It makes it really easy. All you do is select the part, swap it, and then select the part you want to replace it with. The one caveat is generally you may have to reposition the box, especially if it's a type C, and you'll probably have to reset the connections on the pipes. So we'll jump into Civil 3D and I'll show you how to do that real quick. So we're back into our drawing. We're going to stay in plan view, and I'm going to make one of these boxes oversized. So I'm going to pick on an inlet box. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say swap part. You could also do this in the ribbon up here, same thing. Now you get your parts list. It's still going to be a type C. I'm going to make it a 4x4 box now, so I just select the box I want to replace it with, hit OK. It makes the block bigger, but you can see it moved it off of the curb because everything with structures is based off of the insert point. So it shifted it, so now I can move it like a block, just like I did before. In this case, it didn't change the rotation, so I can just bump it up to where it needs to be. And there it is. Now I'll reset my connections, and it bumps those up. And there you go. Now you have an oversized box there. Now we'll swap a pipe too. So I'm going to swap this one. Click on it, right click, swap part. Brings up my list. We're going to make it a 36-inch HDPE, because why not? You do that and you see it upsized the pipe to 36-inch. Now when I do a pipe, I usually reset the connections at both ends. Sometimes you need to, sometimes you don't, but I typically do it anyway. You can see this one, because of the angle, it wants to put it on the wrong wall. So just like before, I can click on it, turn off my object snaps, and use those interactive grips to put it where it needs to be. In profile, it has upsized that pipe. I'm not really sure why the inlet disappeared, but we can fix our alignment snaps here to stay on the box. And keep moving forward. So that's how you swap pipes. If you have an outfall pipe or something and you want to make it a null structure, same process. We'll pretend for a second that this is an outfall. So I'm going to click on the part, swap part, and I'm going to change it to a null structure and hit OK. It puts regen. It puts this block here. This is a block, I believe it's on PS viewport, so it does not print, but you can add labels to it. So I can label the name of that with my name only label style and drag that to where it would need to be. And it would draw it in. So that's how you would swap that. Now I'm going to save this. I'm going to save it, but I'm going to keep it open. Our next exercise is going to be out of a new drawing, but we are going to jump back and make a storm chart out of this quick. So we'll jump forward. Next up, I've had people asking about what to do if you have curved pipes. This often comes up on subdivisions where you have curves in the road. Generally, we hold an offset from the curb line with where these pipes need to be, so they're going to show up as curves. You can model that, but there are a couple of extra steps, so I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. So we're going to jump into a new drawing. And we're just going to draw a polyline to use as the path for our pipe. And I'm just going to fillet it so everything is tangent, like so. And we're going to create a pipe network out of that. So real quick, we are going to make a pipe network. From objects, we're going to pick the flow direction. We're going to call it PR storm. Pick our storm sewers. We're going to tell it to use 15-inch HDPE. We're going to tell it to use type C inlets. Click OK. So you can do it that way using objects, and it'll connect things. It'll put a curved pipe in there for you. The other thing you can do, instead of doing it from objects, you can create it the way we did before, where we manually add our parts. So I get my dialog just like before. We're going to add some type C inlets in here, and we're going to draw structures only. I'm going to snap to my endpoints. Now it put boxes here. I made it huge, but there are boxes in there. And now what we're going to do is draw some pipes. One thing to note, this in our plan, excuse me, would be one pipe run, but with the way pipe networks are, you have to have a structure between tangents and curves. So what we would typically do is put a null structure in. So I'm going to select the two that I want to swap out. And I got to do it one at a time. So I'm going to select one. I'm going to swap part to a null. It puts it in for me. All this does is lets us connect everything. They're not going to print. And now I'll draw my pipes in. So we're going to do 15-inch, pipes only. We're going to say this is the high end. We're going to draw our pipes from high to low like we would normally. When you're drawing, you'll get the connection interactive glyph that shows up at the end of that pipe. Looks like a crosshair. That's telling you that you're connecting. So I just connected there. This is the curved section. So I'm going to hit C for curve. And it's going to ask for either the end point of the curve, or I can specify a radius, or I can give a 3-point. What I'm going to do is actually do a 3-point. I'm going to snap to the mid, and then I'm going to connect to my null. That way it matches the radius of my polyline. And now we're going to do L for line to go back to drawing straight segments. and we'll just finish that up. So now you have a curved pipe. You can see there are some grips in here. You can adjust the radius like you would a polyline if you need to. You can move your endpoint grips as needed, but it's connected. You can set the slopes just like you would any other pipes in your pipe properties, and that's how you would model that. The way you would show it in your storm chart, it's unfortunately going to show 3 pipes between these 2 inlets. We are going to have these null structures. We would call these T structures, which is just a point of pipe tangency. So you would name these structures like T1 and T2, and then you would set the description in your storm chart to be point of pipe tangency so that they know it's not a box, it's just where that curve starts and ends. So that's how you're going to create a curved pipe section. That's come up a decent amount. If anyone needs to do this and can't remember or has issues getting it to work, you can come see me. I'd be happy to help you out with it. So from here, we are going to jump back into the presentation. I think we have one more thing to do. Yeah, last thing, we're going to create a storm chart. So when we make storm charts, typically I like to break them up into pipe runs. Helps keep things organized and in order. You also have to create 2 tables for each. You have to create a structure table and then a pipe table that nests into it. That's because creating a structure table, Civil 3D will not allow that structure table to read certain properties of your pipes. So the lengths and slopes don't always come out correct. So the best way we've found to do it has been to create a separate pipe table that we just fit into the other one. It works. It's an extra step, but it's not bad once you do it a few times. And then we'll show it, but whenever you create these, you want to make sure you have the same annotation scale that you're going to make your viewports in the plan. Typically this is 50, so it would be the same as when we make a legend or something like that. Okay, there's a few things that have come up with people doing this. Sometimes the tables don't line up. One thing that we've found can cause this is spaces in structure names. Sometimes that makes it add an extra line to the table. Showed an example there, out A-1 versus out -A1. Those kind of simple fixes in naming have helped. Keeping structure descriptions to a reasonable length. If you make a paragraph for a single inlet, it's going to screw up the chart. If you have to do it, come see me and we'll figure something out. But generally speaking, try to keep it as short as you can, but getting all the information that needs to be there. And then making sure the pipes are drawn in the correct direction. If they're drawn the wrong way, the table will not be in the correct order. I'll show when we make our table, but there is one column that is shared and overlaps between the 2 tables. That's done intentionally so that you can check whether everything is in the correct order. If it is, you won't notice any difference in the overlap. It'll just look bold because all the information will be the same. And then we're going to talk about setting structure descriptions. You can do it for each box, or you can do it for each set of inlets in the Project Explorer, which we'll show. That can save a lot of time. Typically, when I set up to do a set of storm charts, I break it up into runs. So you can see this is an example of how I might do it. I would highlight different sections that I want to make individual tables for, and then I would just add all of these tables to my plan sheet. So we'll jump into Civil 3D and we will give this a shot and see how it goes. All right, so we're back in our drawing. And the first thing we are going to do is set our annotation scale to 50. It's very important. So we do that. It's going to make our plan view look not great. You can turn off a few layers if you need to make it easier. Next thing we are going to do is create a structure table. So we're going to go to Annotate, Add Tables, Pipe Network, Add Structure. Under the table style, we are going to go to PTE, Storm, Structure Table, and you want the one that says Split Chart Left Side at the end of the name. From here, you select what you want to label. We do not want to label the entire network because if we have multiple pipe runs, it's going to have everything out of order. So we're going to do multiple selection, and here's where that highlighted plan that I showed comes into play. You would only select each of those runs you want to do. I would create that table, and then I would cross that out on the plan that I highlighted so I don't lose track of what's done. So now I'm going to select everything I want to label. So we're going to grab our boxes. We're just going to go to there for now. So we're doing 5 inlets. And this stuff can stay as is. Generally speaking, you're not going to have enough items in your table to need to worry about it jumping to a second row. If you would, you can just make this number higher so it doesn't jump over to the other row. You want it to be dynamic so that if you have to change an invert or a top, your table automatically updates. We hit OK. It's going to ask us where we should put it. We're going to put it over here. And now we are going to add our pipe table. So we're going to go to Add Tables, Pipe Network, Add Pipe. We're going to choose the one that says Split Chart Right Side. And we're going to pick just the pipes that connect the inlets that we have on the other table. So we have 5 inlets. That means we should have 4 pipes in between, and we do. We're going to hit OK, and now you can see it is basically filling in the information that goes over here. We have it set up so that it can share the insert point with the other table, so we're going to use the top left corner, and you can see nothing lines up. This is what I was referring to earlier with the naming. The names are too long, so it jumped it down to a different line. So what I'm going to do is just quickly rename these. The way we rename inlets, we click on the box, we can go to Structure Properties, and in the Information tab, you can type a name. So I'm just going to make it I1, apply and OK. You can see it jumped it up a layer or a row. We're going to do that for all of the other ones. So this project, right now we only have 5 inlets that we're putting in here. That's only 5 to name. We could do each one individually pretty quickly, and it's not a big deal. But if you have a big project with a lot of inlets, you may want to label a bunch at once. The way you're going to do that is by opening a tool called the Project Explorer. So that is in your Home tab, and it's this button up here. So we open that up. It opens up a table type interface. Within this, we're going to go to the Pipe Networks tab. Here it lists the networks that are in the drawing. We're going to click PR Storm, and it gives our structures. It gives all the names. We can go through and we can select the ones we want to name. You can double click on it, and you can say, you could type I2, I3. I'm just going to name them real quick. I'm not sure what order they need to be in for this particular one, but we're just going to, oops, I already have an I4. I5, I6, and this is my null structure. We're going to make it out1. So now you can see all of your pipes or all of your boxes. There's also a pipes tab if you would need to change anything in here. It gives all of that information. But generally, you're just going to be in the structures tab when you're talking about storm sewer. So that's how we can set that. This is also where you can set your descriptions. So what I typically like to do, if I have a bunch of different types of inlets, I'll sort these by structure style. So it'll group all of my 2x4 type Cs, all of my 4x4 type Cs, and then you can select all of each type. So I'm going to select all the 2x4s, right click, set descriptions, and I can just type in one description and hit OK, and it'll apply it everywhere. Typically we have our standard descriptions that we use. I'm just going to type in a quick one for the sake of what we're doing. So I'm just going to type 2x4 type C inlet, okay. I'll do the 4x4 as well. Set descriptions. And hit OK. And now I can close the Project Explorer. If you use Project Explorer and it opens on your second screen, you always want to do what you need to do within it and then close it. Because what you'll find is as you're doing other things in the CAD window, it refreshes the Project Explorer every time you change something, and it'll make your drawing freeze up. So you want to only have it open if you're actively using it. So I closed it up, and now you can see our names are in there. They're a little out of order, but I would put those in the right order, in a real project. It put in the descriptions that I typed in for these guys, and it put in the correct information for the pipes. This column is the overlapping one I was talking about. You can see that everything now lines up, which means they're correct. So that is how we would do that. So that is a storm chart. The other thing that we do sometimes run into, we need to add, say, an outfall to our chart. Those obviously do not have top of grates because they don't have grates. Civil 3D doesn't know that, so it says that they do. The best way we found so far to get around that is to just put wipeouts over it. It's not probably the most proper way to do it, but for right now, it's the way we found that works. And then hopefully in the future, we can figure out a way to take that variable out for those types of structures. But the way you typically do that, we're going to pretend that this I2 is actually an outfall pipe or an end wall or the end of a culvert. We're just going to type wipeout. And we're going to use a polyline, so I'm just going to draw a box around it. Wipes it out so you can't see it. The other thing you want to do is set your wipeout frame variable. It's 1 by default. 1 means you can see the border and it prints. If you make that a 2, it will set it so you can see the border, but it will not print. So you'll just see this as being blank since it would not have a top on it. So that's how you can kind of get around that issue. So that's how you set your storm charts, or create them rather. We'll jump back in here and finish up. The last thing I have is, lately we've had people have problems with inlets that just shrink on their own for some reason. The block gets small, gets like half size. It's a glitch within Civil 3D. We're not entirely sure why it does it, but it seems to be connected to changing the top of grade elevation for some reason. A couple things you can try to fix it is changing the top of grade manually, saving your drawing, closing it, reopening it, and changing it back. Sometimes that'll bring it back to the right size. I would always try and audit and recover. Sometimes that'll help. And if all else fails, you may have to delete the structure and put it back in using the pipe network creation tools. If you try these and they don't work, you can come see me. I'd be happy to look at it with you and see what we can figure out. But it's a glitch. We can't really do anything about it yet. But if we can find a good, reliable fix, we'll email that out to everybody. So that's all I had for today. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute, throw something in the chat, whatever. We'll wait a minute or two to see what anybody has. While I give you a minute to see if you have anything. Next month's CAD training is scheduled for August 15th, and it's going to be on Project Explorer and some miscellaneous Civil 3D information. Let's see, John Hauser says lots of information. Yeah, this was kind of a lot for one training session, so if anybody has questions, or you're reviewing the stuff and something doesn't make sense, or I was going a little too fast, let me know. If it's something that seems like everybody should get a little bit more clarification on, maybe we'll add it to another one of these monthly sessions so we can kind of build on what we have so far. Always appreciate any input anyone can give to try to make these as productive and beneficial as possible for everyone. So, seeing no questions, thank you everybody for joining us, and I guess we'll see you next month.